What's up, TFC community? Nick here in Ottawa, and today I wanted to do a 2-month update on our Disrupt Footwear project. So we're really still at the very start of our footwear experiment and our mission to really reframe how we think of shoes and bring back a true purpose to footwear, which is protect the foot from damage, but allow it to function as naturally as possible otherwise. So our first footwear model is called the FC.05. And we considered it sort of our beta shoe because it really was just a way to begin collecting data. And so to anyone who's purchased an FC.5, thank you for your support. Thank you for your feedback, more importantly, because the only way we can, if we're sort of building this from scratch, taking a completely new approach with how we make the shoes, what the design looks like, what the sizing is like, we're sort of really starting at the ground level. And it's only with people's feedback on how they feel, how the sizing is, that we can adjust and evolve, right? Our goal is not, we didn't expect this to be a perfect shoe, but we feel it's done pretty well for what it is as our first sort of release, and as something that's $50 foot protection. So a couple things that we've learned. Number one, let's talk about sizing. So the feedback we've gotten on sizing, and just to give you a little aside, we have every month we release a certain amount of pairs of these in our beta testing squad. And basically, if you're part of that squad, you buy the shoes, you wear them for 4 weeks, you put them to the test, and then once you fill out our feedback survey, you get half your money back. So as a thanks for helping us improve these shoes and really changing, creating a movement to change footwear, we value that feedback quite a bit, and so we're willing to pay people to be able to test these shoes. And the feedback we've gotten about sizing has been mixed. There hasn't really been, we get people who get the shoes and they're too small or too tight. We also get people who buy the shoes and they're too big or too loose. And if everyone was saying they're too tight, we would adjust the sizing scale accordingly. But the fact that we're getting some people that they're too big, some people that are too small, signals to us that it's more of a measurement error, where people aren't measuring their feet in the right way. And so, and also everyone has a personal preference in how the shoes and how they like their footwear to fit. Some people like footwear to be snug. Some people like there to be a bit more room. I personally ended up going a length bigger than what I had measured at because my foot's quite wide. And so I tried a bunch of different sizes and I landed on a size that was a bit longer than what I measured at, but having the extra width just felt better to me. And the cool thing about shoes that are really, really natural, that are flat, that are shaped like feet, that have a thin sole and that are super flexible, is that because the shoe moves with your foot, having a bit of room at the toes or even a little bit of room at the heel, because in this design, in this first design, which is based on sort of a water shoe design, sometimes the feet can tend to shift a bit forward. And one thing we're going to be doing in future with design is putting in tension lines in the upper. And what I mean by that is areas of the upper that are reinforced with a material that's not as flexible and that will help seat the foot right in the right spot over the sole instead of allowing it to shift around. So we've got a bunch of design ideas for the next iterations. The next version is already underway where we're going to reinforce the front toe area. And shortly after that, we're going to be implementing a sole that we've been working on for the past couple of months with Vibram to beef up the durability and give us, just a better quality sole. But I think that for the most part with sizing, it's a flexible sizing system, and there's only 6 sizes right now, but that covers most things, most sizes from a women's 6 to like a men's 13, which is pretty cool. And the reason it can do that and we don't have to have specific sizes for every incremental foot size is because these expand to kind of accommodate to the size of your foot, and also having a bit of extra room isn't a bad thing if the shoe moves with your foot. Right? If the shoe is rigid and you have extra room, then your foot can tend to shift around within the shoe. But if the shoe or the footwear moves with your foot, not as big of an issue. So sizing seems to be working pretty well. Some people are having issues with it, but it seems to be a measurement error, and we're just helping people get that sorted out. I think another thing that's come up is durability. And one thing we realized was that our alpha testing team, or the team that tests this sort of prototype before it even goes out for the public to be able to purchase, most of those people had really natural feet. They had been people as part on our core team that have been in natural footwear or spent time barefoot for a long time. And so we didn't have any durability issues, but what we're seeing is that when people come from conventional shoes, that can result in isolated stiffness in the foot. One specific example of that is the toe spring that's in most footwear, which means that the front of the shoe curves upward. And what that's for is to allow you to roll off the front of the shoe, because it doesn't actually allow your big toe to extend, right? Naturally, if we walk barefoot, our big toe would extend and then we would lift the foot off. But if your big toe can't extend in a shoe, they have to do something to help you. And so they create this rocker or this sort of concave ramp that you can then roll off of. What that means is that most people are not used to using their big toes, big toe extension. And so we start to get stiff there. And that's actually one of the causes of something like bunions. If your toe can't extend and you're pushing through it as you're coming through your step with walking, then it has to go somewhere. And oftentimes it kind of leans towards the other toes. And what we're finding is that if you have feet that don't move naturally, that have some mobility restrictions, instead of, for example, extending through the big toe, which is possible in these shoes because they're so flexible, instead of extending through the big toe and having your foot come off, you run into a wall and then you tend to roll off the front of the big toe. And so this area in front of the big toe where the upper meets the sole, you start to expose that area to friction. And that upper material is not good at resisting wear and tear. And so, it's sort of it's a problem that needs to be solved. But it's also not necessarily a problem with the durability of the materials. It's really an issue with how the foot is using the shoe. And how essentially if you have a foot that doesn't move naturally, you end up focusing the friction and the wear and tear to areas that are moving unnaturally within your foot. And so, we can't expect everyone, especially people coming from conventional footwear, it's to be expected that they would have some mobility restrictions. And so to solve that problem, what we're going to do is either use a different sole that has a bigger lip coming up in kind of the front area, or look at an upper that has sort of a layer of reinforcement along the perimeter of the shoe. Another area some people are finding issues with, although much more infrequently, is towards the side here, where that same upper material is starting to wear down. And it looks like when the shoe is not wide enough, and our hope is to eventually make a broad array of lengths in 1 centimeter increments, and also offer a variety of widths. But right now we can only offer the sizes that these manufacturers make. And if you get a shoe that's the right length, but your foot is wider than the width of the sole, what happens is your foot kind of overlaps, or like muffin tops over the sole of the shoe. And so it protrudes out, which is fine because the upper is flexible, but you end up wearing some of the upper neoprene material. You end up exposing it to friction on the ground where that's not supposed to be the case. So a lot of the durability issues stem from foot mechanics and gait mechanics, which will improve over time. And actually, it's interesting because if you use FC.5 sequentially, you'll actually see a difference in the wear patterns as your foot is adapting. And the beautiful thing about feet is that if you wear natural footwear, every step you take, every time you're standing, you're giving your body a stimulus to adapt, right? When you stand without arch support, you're strengthening and cueing the muscles of the foot to activate. When you walk in a shoe that's super flexible, like something like this, that you can literally crumple up into a ball and put it in your pocket, you end up permitting these joints that may not have been moving for a while in conventional shoes, which tend to be quite stiff and actually push your toes in together. You're starting to allow those to move, and just walking around, locomoting, whether that's running, walking, jogging, whatever it might be, in a natural shoe that lets your foot move naturally will actually restore function of your foot over time without you doing any extra specific exercises, which is pretty cool. So, we see footwear as the biggest problem with foot health and foot function, but it's also the biggest opportunity because you can essentially rehab your foot without spending any extra time by just switching the footwear you wear. Okay, so sizing seems to work pretty well. Some people are having issues, but you really have to make sure to measure your foot precisely. And the measurements that we sort of put online, there's the length and the width, and those measurements, if I flip this shoe inside out, reflect the longest part of the shoe and the widest part of the shoe. So if you measure the longest part of your foot and the widest part of your foot in millimeters, you should be able to get a pretty good idea of what size of shoe you need according to universal footwear sizing, which is the sizing system that we've implemented. When in doubt, go a little bit bigger. That tends to help out. And like I said, a bit more room is better than having squish toes. And when you wear a shoe that moves with your foot, a little bit of extra space actually doesn't seem to create any problems. I know that for me, it didn't, and that sentiment has been some of the feedback we're getting is that there's a bit of extra room, but they feel okay because the shoe moves with my foot. There's a footbed in this first model. It's this little thin foam removable footbed, and it's a pain in the ass. And so most people, I personally just take them out and use just the rubber. I actually find I get way better ground feel. The drawback to that is that it's not super grippy, as some people have said, although I haven't really had much of a problem when my feet are either wet or sweaty. But the black rubber can also cause a little bit of darkening of your foot, like probably the dyes from the rubber start to rub off on your foot, so you can have little dark patches on your foot. They wash off, but it's annoying. So one thing we're going to work to do, probably not in the next iteration, but the one after for sure, is to put a thin sewn in sock liner. So just a thin layer of material that hopefully doesn't absorb moisture, so that's not a source of stinkiness, in there, so that it's not going to move around, shift around, crumple up. It's not going to impede on the sensory input, but it will be something that, if you've ever worn Vibram 5 fingers, they have that in those shoes. And so we think that's going to improve things. Another obstacle we're running into, especially right now it's December 4th of 2020, is international logistics. So shipping is taking longer to get to some places than others. The further you are away from Ottawa, Canada, obviously the longer it takes. And if you do not select a tracked shipping method, it seems to be that it can take a while, and it's really hard for us to predict it. How long it'll take to get to you, for three main reasons. Number one, Christmas shipping volumes have already kind of started to beef up. Number two, all the restrictions with COVID-19 seem to be slowing down international logistics. And then number three, it's really hard for us to predict customs clearance. Every country is different, has a different procedure, has a different level of efficiency. So if you order a pair of FC.5s and they're taking longer than expected to arrive, we really appreciate your patience. Once it leaves our doors, we have very little control over it. And if you didn't select a tracked service, then we can't really track the exact location. But for some people who it's taken much longer than anticipated, they end up always arriving. And we apologize for the delays, but some things we just can't affect. So I hope that gives you all a decent update on our footwear mission. If you want more information, you can go to disruptfootwear.com. And really our mission is to create world-class natural footwear and do it in a way that's good for your feet and also good for the planet. Right? And when we say good for the planet, everyone's saying that these days, but really what that means is use as little material as possible with as simple manufacturing methods as possible, as few chemicals as possible. And in the end, we want to domestically manufacture them. So, and even ideally bring that over to different countries, so that if you're buying these in Australia, final assembly of the parts, which is there's only 3 parts to these shoes, which is why it's a pretty beautiful design. There's the sole, the upper, and then a strip of material at the back. What we want to do in the end is have the components created and manufactured in Canada, sent out to different countries, and have final assembly happen in those countries, so that if you buy a pair of footwear from us in Australia, they were manufactured and assembled by the hands of an Australian domestically in Australia. And same thing for every country. So, I mean, those are pretty lofty goals, but I think if you aim high, you at least have a high bar to try and meet. And 2 months in, we've sold probably close to 400 or 500 of these pairs. I should have checked that before I did this, but something around that, which has been amazing. The support is amazing. We appreciate it. To everyone who ordered a pair of these, we hope you're enjoying them. We hope you love them. They're not perfect, but they're a pretty good start. And we look forward to continuing to evolve and iterate these designs, the materials, just the quality of the shoes as time goes on. So we're in it for the long run. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate especially all the feedback. Thanks for watching this. We hope it was informational, and we'll catch you later.